Hello, everybody, and welcome to our keynote address this first day of ACX21. My name is Sage Johnson, and I'm the Director of Marketing for PACE, and it's my pleasure to welcome everybody here and to welcome, first of all, John J. Senna. He is with Newstar. Newstar is our diamond partner. They've been longtime partners of PACE, and just want to thank you, John J., for your continued support, and I'll hand it off to you for a few words and an introduction of our keynote speaker.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sage, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Hello, everybody, and welcome to day one of PACE ACX 2021. My name is John G. Senna. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Newstar, and we're proud to be the diamond sponsor to join the PACE community today. At Newstar, we help contact centers, over 8,000 enterprises, and more than 800 carriers created trusted call experiences. As a consumer, if you've ever seen that scam or robocall warning show up on an incoming call, that's the unfortunate experience your customers might have today. So we enable enterprises to improve that call experience, to protect from inaccurate labeling, spam tagging, and call blocking. We're also enable enterprises to improve that call experience by displaying rich content like the full name, logos, images, and reason for the call to increase answer rates and conversion rates, and fundamentally inform consumers so they can better decide whether to answer that phone or not. We provide caller ID and stir-shaken call authentication to the leading carriers in the telecom industry. And we're working with enterprises so they can sign their own calls to receive the highest level of attestation, so their legitimate calls go through. As a plug, I wanted to share that Newstar is hosting a session later today at 3 o'clock entitled Overcoming the Impacts of Negative Call Experiences with Branded Calling. Join us for that. And speaking of experts in customer experience, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker. Myra Golden helps companies create the best possible customer experience. Topic of very near and dear to my heart, Myra. She has designed and delivered training for the CDC, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, AARP, Ally Bank, Michelin Tires, Frito-Lay, and others. Huffington Post named Myra one of the top 10 customer service bloggers, and she's the co-author of Beyond Wow. She graduated from the University of Oklahoma in psychology and a master's in human relations. Myra developed her de-escalation tactics after years of study and interviews with former police officers, armed security guards, mental health professionals, and an arbitration lawyer. Very timely. Her keys to delivering bad news comes directly from her discussion with doctors. Along the way, Myra has taught college and university students, served on corporate boards, and been homeroom mom and PTA board member. Please help me welcome Myra Golden. Myra, over to you.
Well, hey, everybody. If you're here, that means you made it through some of the toughest times that we in the customer experience have ever seen. It has been tough. It has been long. It is still ongoing. But today, instead of focusing on de-escalation with people and interactions, we're going to take the crisis that we have lived through, that we're living through, and we are going to flip that on its head. I'm so excited about what I have to share with you today. When we were in the thick of the pandemic, I asked my mother, who is 74 years old, where do you want to go? When we get out of this thing, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Because the pandemic was especially hard on her as an older person. I mean, our older people had a lot of fear, and they really did stay in. And so when I asked my mother, where do you want to go when we feel it's safe? Of everywhere in the world, is what I said, She said, I want to go to the Grand Canyon. My mother told me that she'd never been to the Grand Canyon. And ever since she was 8 years old, has been her dream. Now, I had been to the Grand Canyon with my family, and I wanted to go again. And I thought, wow, of every place in the world that my mother could have chosen, a woman who has traveled internationally, she chose the Grand Canyon. And I thought that while we were in Arizona, why not only go to the Grand Canyon, but also go to Antelope Canyon. Now, I don't know if you all have heard of Antelope Canyon or been, but it is one of the most beautiful places in the United States. It's picturesque. It is otherworldly. It just doesn't even feel real. I had not been to the Antelope Canyon, and I thought, okay, we'll get to experience this together. So I mentioned it to Mom. She said, absolutely, I want to go. Parts of it looks like you're actually on Mars. So in July of 2021, we felt safe enough. We thought for not the first time that we were coming out of the pandemic. I took my mother, I took my son to Antelope Canyon and the Grand Canyon. Now, as I mentioned, I'd never been to Antelope Canyon. When we get to Antelope Canyon, I discover that to get down to this beautiful, picturesque place, you have to descend a staircase that is steep. It is like, imagine a 2-story house, really a 2.5-story house, if that were to exist. And you just leaned a ladder against the house and you climb down. That is what it's like going into Antelope Canyon. I had no idea. I'd read up on it, but all I saw was the pretty. Now, my mother is 74 years old, and I was scared to death for her to descend this staircase to get to Antelope Canyon, but she did it. She did it. And when we got to the bottom, I released a sigh of thank God. Then when we get down that staircase, I learned that we're going to have to climb more staircases. We descended, but we're going to have to climb staircases, 11 staircases that are about 2.5 flights each, extremely steep, no handrails, I should say. And my mother and I learned this after we descended the 2.5 flights. And I was worried for Mom. I was worried for me. And I remember saying to Mom, if you don't feel that you can do this, we don't have to do it. We do not have to do it. I did not do enough research. We can just enjoy the Grand Canyon. And our tour guide said, well, you kind of have to. There's no way out of the canyon. You either go back up that steep staircase and miss it all, or you continue the journey and you go up the rails. And I really could not imagine that at that time. But my mother said, I can do this. I can do it. And we had my son who's 18 with us. And my son said, I can help. I can guard Grammy. We'll make sure that she's all right. And so we climbed for about an hour and all of these stairs. And to my great delight, Mom did it. She did it, and we didn't have a cardiac event. She did it, and we all lived through it. And the result is we got to see the most beautiful place I have seen in the US. And my mom said that actually rivaled the Grand Canyon, which was her dream, again, since she was 8 years old. So the beauty rivaled the Grand Canyon. Now, I shared that adventure with you because I think the journey we've just been through with COVID, the journey that we are still in, that is like climbing a steep 2.5 staircase over and over and over again. Many of you here shifted instantly to a remote workforce. I remember my last in-person training before the pandemic was March 11th, 2020. All right. We knew COVID was out there. We knew it was real, but we didn't think it was going to affect us. A lot of us didn't here in the US. And I was in Spokane, Washington. The virus was in Seattle. And I remember I was doing 2 workshops. I did a half day that morning, half day that afternoon. In the afternoon session, the director came and pulled out the manager who was working with me in the training and gave her the directive that immediately we need to order equipment because we're shifting to to remote workforce. Like immediately, this is a decision that usually takes years, right? You are researching, you are benchmarking, you phase it out, you test, you work out the bugs. But a lot of you, like my client that day in Spokane, Washington, had to do that instantly. You found yourself in a place like my mother and I in Antelope Canyon, we didn't get to go back. And we had to go forward. If we were going to ensure business continuity, we had to ascend that steep staircase over and over and over again. Today, I have come to talk to you about what crisis teaches us about possibility. We are in a crisis. I hope we are on the other end of that crisis, but right now we are in a crisis and we have come through that. And I want to use what we've been through to our advantage and look at what crisis can teach us to help us as we ensure business continuity. Teach us about possibility, teach us about creativity. Now, I have researched crisis ever since we left Antelope Canyon and we lived through it and we enjoyed the experience. I began to study what can we learn from crisis. And Harvard Business Review published a study before COVID about what crisis does for us. And one of the points the study made is when basketball teams or hockey teams have an injured player or injured players, very often they experience an energy, a surge, a coming together with limited resources, because you wanted to have in basketball your starting five. You want everybody healthy. But when one person is injured, they come together in a stunning way. And very often in these two sports, we see victory. Now, I was talking to my husband and son about this. Like, have you seen this in other sports? And I'm a huge college football fan. I went to the University of Oklahoma, Boomer. We've got any Sooners out there. And I watch all things college football. My husband and son broke down for me what happened in 2018. So Alabama was playing Georgia for the SEC championship. And the starting quarterback, Tua, from Hawaii, everybody's favorite, super talented, he got injured. Injured to the point that he was out. He was out of that game. In fact, I think he was out for the season, but I know that game. The backup quarterback, Jalen Hurts, was put in the game. I don't know that we'd seen him start at all that year, but he came in and he led Alabama to a victory over Georgia for the championship. Exactly what Harvard said, Harvard Business Review. When we experience a crisis, very often when we feel like we have no option, when there's no other way to go but up, but forward, we come together using the resources that we have. Have we not seen that in COVID, like in an amazing way? Think about the innovation that we have seen in pretty much every industry since COVID. One of my largest clients is LinkedIn Learning. And prior to the pandemic, I would fly up to their studios in the Los Angeles area and we would film courses. And that's what I do for them. I film courses that are on their platform. And they have a number of stages. They have light technicians. They have, you always have a director, you have a producer. I have a full crew and I film courses. Well, the pandemic made that impossible. California was one of those states, if you're there, that was completely shut down. I watched my client completely shift to remote work like you did. Here's what they're doing now. They send you the entire studio in a box that is like 14 boxes. They send you the lights, the camera, the sound panels, and the camera when we record from our homes is controlled live by the director in Carpinteria, California. You're talking live to your producer. You spend a day in setup even before you train. That is an example of adapting. There's no way but forward. We're not going to stagnate. We're not going to not move forward. Think about classrooms. You think about Zoom classrooms. Did we ever imagine that we would have classrooms where students from their home are learning? And it's not as simple as just going to Zoom, because not every student, as you well know, has internet, has a laptop. If you have internet, don't have a strong connection, but we've come together as communities and made that work. I live in Tulsa, in our largest school district, Tulsa Public Schools. We have a lot of people that don't have laptops or tablets. Nearly instantly, we had organizations donate laptops to students. And then my largest client here in Tulsa is our library system, Tulsa City County Library System. They got hotspots that people could check out. Students, K through 12, could go to the library and check out to have internet in their home. Coming together, communities coming together, teachers and parents supporting each other so we could continue. I mean, look at this. During the pandemic, and this was actually in 2021, my husband developed a dry cough. It started with, he had some fatigue, he had a fever, and like a complete loss of energy. And it seemed pretty instant. Then the cough came. Now, we were sure that he had COVID, like in the house. My children and I are wearing masks because we don't want to get this COVID. But my husband was sure he didn't have COVID. He wasn't vaccinated, but he was sure he didn't have it. So he did, at my prompting, take a test. While waiting on the COVID results, he scheduled a virtual doctor's visit. Something that I'd seen on TV. I knew my mother was doing that for her regular appointments, but we had not experienced that in our home. So my husband scheduled a visit. That visit was maybe 25 minutes with the doctor. The doctor diagnosed my husband not with COVID, but with bronchitis. I was sure she was wrong, but it turned out, later verified by an in-person doctor, that my husband did not have COVID. He had bronchitis. I was amazed at the accuracy of a diagnosis through an iPhone talking to a doctor. All of these are examples of what the pandemic crisis has pushed out of us. This is possibility. This is innovation. And if you're working in the customer experience, and I know you are, you have seen this to varying degrees and probably to major degrees. So today, let's take that possibility. Let's get the best out of it. Now, it's not only Harvard Business Review that's telling us what's possible, not only what we are seeing with our own eyes and what we are experiencing, but MIT has done research. Now, this is since we've been right here in the pandemic. They've done research to show us what a crisis can do for business. First point, a crisis provides a sudden and real sense of urgency. And that's exactly what we've seen. That day when I was in Spokane, Washington, and the manager immediately ordered laptops and began to look at who needs desks and getting phones to her large team so that they could go remote in less than a week. That is exactly what a crisis will do. That is something, again, that usually will take years. And she did this in less than 7 days. Many of you did exactly the same thing. That is a benefit. That is taking a crisis and turning it on its head, using that sense of urgency, that pressure to your advantage. The urgency that the crisis gives us enables organizations to drop all other priorities. And they say enable. I think really it forces us. It forces us to put everything on the back burner. We're going to focus on this crisis. We're focusing on a single challenge, and we're reallocating all of our resources as needed. That is what happens. When my mother went to Antelope Canyon and was able to climb those stairs, descend those stairs, and climb again, everything in her focused on that moment. She wasn't thinking about what was for dinner. She wasn't thinking about the grandkids that weren't with her. She was in that moment. And that is what a crisis will do for us. With this singular focus, and we're still talking about what MIT has found and the reallocated resources, it is now everybody's job to come together. It's everybody's focus to solve the problem. And that brings a new diversity of viewpoints. It brings a new perspective. And it is amazing. I remember in the canyon with my mother, not only did me and my 18-year-old son support my mom, but the tour guide, we had a couple of other men there that would be there to brace mom. They were ready to catch her. Everybody was focused. People we had met before that morning was focused on keeping my mother safe. That almost makes me emotional because a crisis is only temporary. And crisis is temporary. The organization can commit to a highly intense effort or over a short period of time. And so MIT is saying a crisis is a good thing. What we've come through in COVID is a good thing. And my question for us today is, what if we could work in crisis mode every single day? Like, what if we took our highest level priorities and we took all that urgency, that focus, those resources, that sense of teamwork, and we knocked out our biggest challenges. We knocked out our obstacles. That's what it takes to flip a crisis on its head. Now, I don't want the panic and the fear of crisis. I want the benefit. When my mother got through Antelope Canyon and our tour was over an hour, I remember her saying, I never thought I could do anything like this. I never thought I could be that physical. You know, she probably isn't very physical anyway at this stage in her life, but particularly with the pandemic, in her house, going only to the grocery store, not much else in those days of the pandemic, she really wasn't physical. And she has said to me a number of times since we've gotten back, face to face, in text and over the phone, you showed me, Myra, what I could do. I didn't think I could do this. I never thought I could hike like this. That is what COVID is teaching us. And I want us to ride on the momentum of what this crisis has pressed out of us. Now, I'm going to give you 3 points that are takeaways that you can implement right away. But before I give you the points, I want you to think about a customer experience impacting problem that you're experiencing right now. Okay, whatever you are facing, whether that is, I don't have enough staff, or I don't have a consistent, friendly customer experience, or we need a smoother customer experience, or we're experiencing a lot of growth. COVID gave us growth and we just cannot keep up. I cannot train the people. Whatever the challenge is for you, I want you to get that experience in mind. I'll tell you, for my husband, he's an operations manager for a trucking company. His customer experience impacting problem is he cannot find drivers. I mean, he cannot find the people to work. And when he finds people, then sometimes they quit. He has a guy right now that called in sick 3 consecutive days, came in and worked a couple of hours. I don't know if he was sick or not, but he came in and worked a couple of hours and then just stopped coming. Didn't quit. There was no notice. He just stopped coming. And he's had that a few times. So for him, it is a staffing issue. What is your customer impacting problem? Get that in mind as I give you points for turning this whole crisis thing of COVID on its back. Now, I'm going to use as my example, you're going to have your own example. I'm going to use the front line. The front line has been through it with COVID. I began to realize that on March 11th in Spokane, Washington, when suddenly people had to move to remote work. And for some people, probably a lot of people, the idea of working from home, that's exciting. You know, I have worked from home for over 20 years. I really do like working from home. The work I do really, supports working from home. I am an introvert by nature, so it really works for me. But working from home doesn't work for everyone, especially when I didn't prepare for this, especially when I have like a 5-day notice. Frontline people are struggling. They had to make an office out of that dining room table or a corner of the bedroom while they're trying to work. They have little children at home that they are having to homeschool. They're still trying to figure that out. They have barking dogs. They have garbage trucks. They have all kind of noise. Maybe they have shaky internet. Maybe they just don't have good technology. Maybe I need that sense of community. So when you throw someone into remote work instantly, who doesn't love it or technically isn't prepared for it, that can be stressful. And so we need to address that and work with the front line in getting through that, because I know a lot of my clients and probably a lot of you still have a remote workforce or a hybrid workforce. I happen to have a direct line of communication with the front line. I have a YouTube channel and my audience is directly the front line. I have very few managers and directors on my YouTube channel, and that's not what I planned, but it worked out beautifully. That YouTube channel has given me a direct line of communication with the front line, and that has really blossomed during the pandemic. And people are reaching out to me and telling me what they struggle with, from a fear of being terminated because I can't get my average call handling down to where it needs to be, or I have been terminated. Can you help me develop the skill set so that I can re-enter the workforce and do that quickly? I actually had a coaching call with a young lady recently in the last 3 weeks who, during the pandemic, she was one of the many that shifted immediately to remote work. And she said, I found out that I was being recorded. I didn't know I was being recorded. I don't recall giving consent. And what I'm hearing from my supervisor is, why so long of a break between calls? Why aren't you taking notes? Why aren't you moving? It turns out her keystrokes were being recorded. And she said, that never happened when we were all together. And what they don't know is maybe I'm researching so I can help one of our customers. Maybe I'm texting someone else on the team to find out, what do I do in this situation? She said for her, the pressure was so much that she left the job. This has been stressful on the front line. So when you think of a customer impacting problem, I want you to also think of the soft dimensions that maybe you don't think of, what the crisis has done to our people. All right, now I'm going to give you 3 high-level keys for how to make the most of a crisis. And we can use these keys for a customer impacting problem. We can use this for a problem with technology. You can use it when you're growing. So the first key is urgency. You know, MIT really focused on the gift of urgency. COVID gave us that. It's not like a hurricane and we saw it coming. All right, not even like a tornado. I live in Oklahoma where we have tornadoes and you get a little warning, not much, but you get warning. We didn't get warning. We just looked up and COVID was here, and that brought an immediate sense of urgency. In 1519, Hernan Cortez landed in Veracruz, and this is what we now know as Mexico. He and his teams, his military, landed in Mexico to overthrow the Aztecs, to take hold of the vast treasures of gold and silver, if they won. So there was a lot at stake, and they were going against the Aztecs, who were super, super powerful. Now, Cortez had only 600 men, and in terms of an army, that is small. The Aztecs were known to be large in number and armed and powerful. To get his small crew of 600 men ready to battle, ready to take these treasures, Cortez reportedly had his men go out to shore and burn the ships. They had to burn every one of the ships. Now that sounds crazy, right? And I first learned this story in history in probably seventh or eighth grade. Now, he wanted them to burn the ships. Imagine an army up in arms, okay? And now we've burned our ships. We have burned our ships. Now, why did Cortez do that? He wanted to have no way back, no return, all right? So if we burn the ships, if we don't win, we're going to die here. You know, that's like Antelope Canyon for my mom. Because our tour guide told us, if you don't go up the stairs, if you don't continue the journey, you know, you're going to have to go back, which is still going through the staircase. There's no point of return. Now, I'm sure if there was a medical emergency, they would have had a point of return. But the way it was explained to us, there was no point of return. When Cortez burned the ships, he inspired a sense of urgency for his army. And then they also won. There's that. They conquered and they got the treasures. When you're in a crisis and you're feeling that sense of urgency, let that work for you. Really create a scenario, okay? Because we're not always in crisis mode, but create a scenario where I have such an intense sense of urgency that it's like we burn the ships. Like I'm not going back, no matter what. Forward is the only way we're going to go. If you can inspire your team to have the sense of urgency that we've all had in COVID, imagine what you could do. And we had that urgency, and look what we did. I am super impressed with the teachers that adapted to be able to teach first graders, seniors online. I'm impressed with doctors that had to meet with people with real conditions, real illnesses, real situations, and accurately diagnose. I am impressed with customer service leaders who have been able to hire, to train, to motivate, support the front line throughout their cities when people are working from home. We've been able to do that because we've had a sense of urgency. Whatever that problem is that you identified, try to muster up a sense of urgency. We're going to do this. And it may be as dramatic as burning the ships, but there's no way out. This is what we're going to do. It is this way or it is no way. The second takeaway is I want us to focus. I want us to have a fierce focus. Now, COVID made us focus, because it was everywhere. We couldn't think about anything else. It was about vaccines. It was about masks. It was about shutdowns. It was about our loved ones dying. It was about keeping our kids safe. A big focus was how do we reopen? But we were focused 100% of the time on the virus, and that virus drove that focus. Imagine if we had that level of focus in our problem, whatever that problem is. We all have different thoughts, and we have different thoughts on the COVID vaccine. But I would inspire you to think about vaccines. When you think about smallpox vaccine, polio, the chickenpox vaccine, which, by the way, when I was a kid, there was no vaccine for chickenpox. That was developed in 1999 after I and all of my siblings and pretty much every kid I knew had chickenpox. Most vaccines take years to develop. When I say years, 9, 10, 11, and more years. But that focus of COVID allowed us to develop not 1, not 2, 3 vaccines in like 9 months. That is what focus will do for you. And I want you to take the problem that you're thinking of, take problems that you will encounter in the future, and attack it with a fierce focus. Of the 3 things that I'm sharing with you in this list, focus is a thing that I had mastered years ago. Mastered might be too strong of a word, but I'm owning focus. I'll tell you that. And I have to own that as a one-woman business. I do it all in my business, from meeting with my clients to the marketing to my customer support. That is all me. Yes, I have contractors. I do have some people, very small team, but most of it is me. And I have to focus just to get through the day, to get through my week. And one of the things that I do to help me focus, and I do many, but one of the things I do is I block my schedule. I read a fantastic book by Michael Hyatt called Free to Focus. Just so happens I read that on my business trip. On the way, I read the audiobook on the way to Spokane, just as we were landing in this COVID space. And Michael Hyatt talks about blocking your schedule so you're not scattered. And so you might, for example, get batch meetings. He recommends 2 days a week. Have all of your meetings, say Tuesday and Thursday, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're free to do other things, to execute projects or to work with your team directly. It may be a long 2 days that you have meetings, but you batch. And I grabbed a hold of that right away. I chose 3 days for my meetings. My meetings in the beginning were conference calls, and now we're, of course, all doing video meetings. And I decided Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those are my meeting days. I'm going to schedule all of my meetings, all of my training sessions on those days. And they may be long days, but it allows me to focus. And then my Mondays and Fridays are free to execute projects for my clients. And that has been really amazing for me in terms of productivity. It's called focus. Another thing that I do, and I got this from Michael Hyatt's book, is I pause my email. I looked at my schedule and I discovered what eats up my time, my work time more than anything else is email. I am checking email before I get out of bed. I am checking email at night when I'm getting into bed. This is before free to focus. Throughout the day, I could picture, I'd be on the patio trying to just enjoy the outdoors, and I'm checking my email. And throughout the day when I'm at my desk. And Mike Hyatt says, no, batch email like you do meetings. And I started to practice that. I have a feature in my email inbox where I can pause my email. And I can literally hit a button that says pause, and I won't get emails delivered. So if I am tempted to pick up my phone, the emails are not going to come. So it took me some time. I had to work my way into this, but I literally paused my inbox. What I do is I check my email. The first time of day typically is 11 a.m. Now I know depending on your job and your role and the demands on you, you may not be able to wait until 11 a.m. to check your email. But I typically do not open my email until 11 a.m. It's automatic. I have it set. It may take me a full hour to knock out the emails because I haven't checked since the night before, but I'll respond to all those emails and then put my emails back on pause and turn it back on at 4 p.m. every day. And that's what I'm doing every day, unless there's an emergency or unless I think I need to hear from somebody. So I have most of my day without emails, and it's a long time to reply to everything when I open it up, 30 minutes to an hour, but that gives me focus. Imagine what you could do if you focused like that. So I encourage you to take this focus, not only on the problem that you're thinking of, but in general. How can I focus because I get all my resources? I tell you, I am more productive on my days when I don't have meetings because I'm not tied up in meetings. I'm more productive when I'm not in my inbox because I'm giving myself that freedom. All right. And the last takeaway here is all hands on deck. Now, the COVID pandemic forced us into this. Teachers had to work with students and schools had to work with corporations. We had to work with the community. Parents had to get involved. It took a village, literally, to get our kids back in school in a remote way. In the workplace, it took the same thing. So customer experience leaders, you are working with your IT team, you are working with marketing, you are working with your people, in many cases with their families to support everyone so that we could get back to work. When it is all hands on deck, when we are working together, look at what we've been able to create. Look at what we've been able to do. We were able to shift our workforce to home. We were able to continue business continuity. And we had a lot of obstacles. We had so many products that were sold out or back ordered. We had customers that were anxious, impatient, and difficult. We saw angry and challenging customers like we never seen, but we came together and we made it work. I mean, look at all the resources it takes to have an online conference. We were supposed to be face-to-face with you, right? In Virginia for this conference, but we put all of our resources together to find the perfect platform to be able to host an interactive event. I want you to take your biggest challenge, and I challenge you to think not only of your biggest challenge, but whatever you're trying to accomplish. Maybe it's not a challenge, maybe it's innovation. What if it was all hands on deck? Now, years ago, when I was a new manager, when I say years ago, I think I was in my early 20s. It was my very first management job. I was manager of a small call center. I had 16 seats. I came into a pretty big mess when it comes to our metrics. I mean, every metric, everything that we measured, it was a disappointment, from the average handle time to how long it took us to reply to emails. Our customer satisfaction index numbers were low. Everything was a mess. I was fresh out of graduate school. It was my first call center job. And I had urgency to get it done because I was really hired to right the ship. And I had the focus. But what I was missing is I needed the team to work with me. So what I did is I formed what is known as a quality circle. A quality circle comes out of the total quality movement of the 80s, a long, long time ago, but we studied that in grad school. And a quality circle is you get the people closest to the problem involved. It's not directors and managers only, it's the people involved in the problem. So what I did is I invited my team to help me solve the problem of the delays in getting back to customers and closing cases and our call handle time. And I can only do it after hours because it was a call center and we had to be there to help our customers. And so I invited people to stay after their 8-hour shift to help me. And that is taking a big risk. What? I've just worked 8 hours and we didn't have budget for overtime. I couldn't even pay them. These were hourly employees and I couldn't pay them. What I could do is I said, I will buy dinner. All right. We'll wrap up at 5. At 5:20, you can meet me in the conference room. Those who want to participate will buy dinner. I'll buy dinner and we will work through this together. So I put it out there in a staff meeting and reinforced with email. Out of my team of 16, 17 people showed up that first meeting. And those 7 stayed with me. We worked about 9 weeks. And it was so powerful because they had insight that I could not have as a manager, that I could not have had coming in from the outside, that I just didn't have because I was actually pretty new to management. But they shared with me why we have delays, what they struggle with. The ideas that I had that were pretty lofty, they let me know in a respectful way. But it ended up being a conversation. But I didn't let them just tell me what didn't work. We came together. For every complaint, every gripe in this quality circle, people had to give me a solution. So I would come back, well, how would you attack this? If you were the manager, what would you do? We worked together for 9 weeks. The ideas they put together, I spent the next 2 years implementing, and I turned our call center around. And that was because it was all hands on deck. Well, all right. I have given you 3 high-level keys for taking a crisis and flipping that on its back, taking whatever you're struggling with and using that to your advantage. And all you have to do is have a tremendous sense of urgency, a fierce focus, and make it all hands on deck. If we do that, we're there. So I am inviting you now to take the first step for that problem you identify, or just in general. How will I be more innovative, more productive by using these 3 keys? I am inviting you, as I begin to close and walk into taking your questions, I invite you to set a SMART goal. Many of you have heard of a SMART goal. A SMART goal is a goal that you set in 5 steps. It is a goal that you set that is specific. I am going to X. You write that down, whatever that is. I'm going to make my agents feel supported, for example, or we're going to get that average handle time down, or I am going to give my team the tools they need to bring down the temperature in interactions. It is measurable. So when I was working with my quality circle, I had about 5 metrics. So it wasn't just one thing, 5 metrics. And measurable, we'll know that because the average email response time or closure of an email is not going to be 22 days. It is going to be 3 days. So that was a goal. Is it attainable? We need to set goals that are attainable. I love having big goals. I want that pie in the sky, but you don't want to hurt yourself, demotivate yourself by setting a goal that maybe is not attainable within this window or with the resources we have. Relevant to your customer experience goals, or relevant to your goals, your performance goals, and a goal that is time bounded. So I like to put a date. We are going to do this in 9 months, in 9 weeks, in 9 days. I want you to set a specific goal that is a SMART goal. Start working on that goal right now as we go into Q&A. And we'll go into Q&A in just a moment. But before we go into Q&A, let me give a few remarks on what happens when you take urgency, fierce focus, and that all hands on deck approach and apply those. Good things begin to happen. This crisis mindset, and that's exactly what it is going to provide a sudden and a real sense of urgency for whatever that project is that you're working on, for whatever the problem is. It is going to give you that sense of urgency. And that urgency, just like MIT found, is going to enable you to fiercely focus on a specific challenge, a single challenge. When you set your SMART goal, don't even do it like I did with the quality circle where I had about 5 goals. I want you to start with one thing. COVID was one problem, and look at all the innovation we got out of that. And with this singular focus and your reallocated resources, because it will be all hands on deck, it's now everybody's job to come up with a solution. And everybody, when they're involved, you get diversity of viewpoints, you get creativity, you get perspectives that you never would have had otherwise. Well, all right. Thank you so much for listening to my ideas, for taking the crisis we've been through, flipping that and using it for a productive tool to help us move forward, to accomplish what we want to accomplish, to help us improve the customer experience. Well, all right. I now want to take your questions. So I'm going to hand things over to Sage to moderate your questions.
Thank you so much, Myra. Oh my gosh, I always have so many notes after listening to you, Myra. We do have a couple questions. One of them has to do with what you mentioned about your quality circle. And Sheldon's wondering, should I get all of my own team together and have a group meeting in an Adobe room, or I think maybe a Zoom meeting, and take notes? So I think probably a virtual situation, right?
So Sheldon, your team is virtual, like a lot of teams. I'll tell you the steps that I took. And if you want more information, even though it's dated, it's called TQM for Total Quality Management. I'm sure, even though this was the 80s, you can Google it. But one of the first steps, and you can do this virtually just as we would in person. So I like Zoom, but whatever platform you use, and you set it up, let people know that, we're going to work on a problem and name that problem. So whatever that is, what I would do differently than what I did before is, because I had several problems, I would take one problem at a time and say, we are going to address average handle time, just because I hear that the most. And I need your help. When I say we, I am intentional about that. I want your ideas. I want your input. I want your insight. So you set it up so they know clearly what the problem is, what we're working on, and what that problem is. And you start out, TQM teaches this with what is known as a data dump. And the word is still so fitting, even though that was in the 80s. Like, we come into meetings, we come into situations with so much in our head. Like, we're griping, my people, especially coming in after an 8-hour shift. So a data dump is where you go around the room, one person speaking at a time, and you just get it all out. Whatever my gripe is, like, I really don't want to be here today. Or I don't see this as a problem that you see it as. Whatever, anything goes, whatever they say. Or it really sucks that I'm missing my kid's soccer game. They can say whatever, one thing, and they kind of just dump it on the table and nobody responds, right? You can nod, you can respond with your facial expression, but no one responds. So it's not a back and forth. It is just a dump. You just kind of get it out. And then after that data dump, and I had 7 people, so it didn't take that long, and not everybody chooses to dump. And I, even as a manager, would dump. Once we do that, then you say, okay, we're done with that. We're done with the negativity. Now we're going to focus on the problem. And so that problem, you work with that week to week until you have solved it. So first you want to define it, make sure everybody's on the same page of what the problem is, because we all have to see it as a problem if we're going to solve it. and they get everybody to work on a solution. You're going to get gripes, even though you did the data dump. And so I hold everybody accountable. Okay, that's fair. What would you do about it? What should we do about it? And you'll get the collective brainstorm of the group. So that is how you do it. And Sheldon, you can do that right in any online platform. And I would do it, I would invite people, encourage people to turn on their cameras. I want to see you when we do this. So yes.
Perfect. Thank you. There's another comment here from Norman. Problem solving sessions, PSS, one of the best strategies in Six Sigma when it comes to bringing people together and getting the best solutions out of your team. Rather than giving solutions, have them think themselves on how to fix KPI related issues.
Norman, yes. I never studied Six Sigma, but my husband did. And he was a really big help to me as I was working with my teams. I don't believe in telling people what the problem is or going in with the solution. Even when I partner with companies as a consultant, I am going to you with, you tell me how you see us approaching this. A technique that I use, Norman and Sheldon, you'll appreciate this as well, is the 5 why technique. And this really gets people involved in the problem. So you as a facilitator, so you as a manager or director, you become a facilitator, not so much a manager. You facilitate a discussion. You facilitate listening. You facilitate the journey to getting to the solutions, but you take the problem and you just ask why 5 times, so why? Okay. So for example, there was I read years ago, Ritz-Carlton had an issue where elevators were slow. Okay. And in a hotel like that, slow elevators is not a good guest experience. I mean, it isn't anywhere, but so why are the elevators slow? And you just ask why. Well, they're slow because typically one of them is just not moving like the other 8, for example. Well, why is that one not moving like the other 8? Because all of our housekeeping staff are told to use elevator car number 8, for example. Well, why are they using that? So we cannot interact with housekeeping, not interact with the guests. Okay, so why is it slow? You just keep asking why. Well, because they will frequently put their housekeeping cart in the elevator to keep the door open. So that elevator is not even moving while they're on that floor cleaning. So you get to the why. So housekeeping is blocking car number 8. If they're not using it, we can let a guest use it. So by asking why 5 times, you very often get to the root of the problem.
Thank you, Myra. I don't see any other questions up here yet. Let's just give it a second here to see, and I'll just bring up a couple things. I think what we'll do is, if everyone on this call is familiar with the community board, which is through the Whova platform, we'll go ahead and create a topic just around your keynote. And if anyone has any more questions, that's a great place to ask those. We do have one more here, Myra, from Daniel. The singular focus is essential, one problem at a time. Thank you. The habit must be cultivated. We've got to practice letting go. How do you let go?
Well, I echo what you said, that singular focus, that can be pivotal in how you attack problems, how you create, how you move forward. You've heard the term compartmentalize. I have to do that. I am juggling so many projects for so many clients, and it can be overwhelming. And so what I do, and I literally use a physical planner. So I sit down every weekend, and that might be Friday at 5 p.m. It might be Sunday at 3. But sometime over the weekend, I reflect on the previous week. I always write down, and I'm writing longhand. First, I start with my wins, like my 3 to 5 wins for the week, because I want a positive mindset, kind of like the data dump. It's similar to that, but you start positive. So I look at what went well, like, you know what, I finished that project on time, or I delivered a high energy workshop and my client loved it. So I'm going to list 3 to 5 things that I did well. And that may be personal too. I got out and walked 5 times this week. So I start there. And then I ask myself, what did I intend to accomplish this week? And I always set a big 3 for the week to focus. Not 10 things I want to accomplish, but 3 high level things. And then I'll look at, all right, did I hit those goals? I don't always hit them. The goal is to, but I'll say, okay, my goal was X, Y, Z. This goal I was 100%. This goal I was 70%. This goal, maybe I didn't even start. Okay. Then I ask myself, what worked and what didn't? In other words, what kept me from reaching that goal? What supported me in reaching the goal that I did? And usually that's urgency, it's focus, it's all hands on deck. But I'm really honest with myself. Then I go into preparing for my next week. In the same session, I set no more than 3 goals. And that I think is really key for me for the week. Doesn't mean that I don't do 100 things in the week, but 3 high level goals. And then I take those 3 goals, and Monday through Friday, I look at what do I need to do on each day of the week to get me by Friday reaching this goal. What do I need to do to get to that goal? And, I mentioned that I schedule a block, that I only take meetings on certain days of the week. I only check email at 2 times a day. And which really, that has been it for me. That is how I disconnect. That is how I unplug. And I always disconnect from work. And at the end of the day, I would love to say that it's 5 o'clock. It's not. It's around 6:30 for me, but that works. My oldest child is in college. My son is 18. He's doing his own thing. My husband usually walks in the door around 6 and usually has a little work to do. So I'm not hurting my family by still working until 6 to 6:30. But my cutoff is around 6:30. I disconnect. Whether I got everything on my high intention list done or not, I disconnect because I need that time. I need to sit down and I'll put on some jazz, or I'm watching the evening news, pour a glass of wine. I have to physically connect, and I walk away. My office, I walk away from it so that I can be free. I need that for me, and I need that to be ready for the next day, because you just can't keep going. You have to be able to decompress. You need to be able to compartmentalize. You need to be able to forgive yourself when you don't hit the goals, because a lot of weeks I don't hit the goal. I carry it to the next week. Now, if it's a deadline with a client and I miss it, that is tough. That means I need to communicate. We need to figure out what we need to do. But I think I've learned to forgive myself and compartmentalize and focus. I think that's what it is for me.
Thank you. I think that's such a good point, Myra, of stepping away and disconnecting. I saw a meme recently that said, we don't know if we're working from home or living from work anymore. Ray just said, good point, Myra. Oftentimes goals are confused with a to-do list. Great distinction there. And I think that takes us to our time, Myra. I want to thank you so much. And again, just reiterate with everyone here that we will have something on the community board if you have more messages or questions from Myra. Also, please make sure that you visit. We're going into a little break so everyone can visit the exhibitor booths. Please do so, especially our Diamond partner, New Star. And something new we're trying this ACX is called speed networking. It's like speed dating, but not. So check that out. That's at 1:30 Eastern. And then we have added a trivia game to our social networking tonight at 5 o'clock. And that again is Eastern. So I hope we see all of you there. And Myra, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.